Okay, well, it is a fantastic to be with all of you today. Thank you for coming to our session. We're going to be talking about emotionally intelligent security leadership to drive business impact. And you may be wondering what emotional intelligence has to do with security leadership. You will find out in the next hour as we spend some time together. My name is Rich Hua. I'm the worldwide head of Epic Leadership. I'm part of Innovation Transformation Programs at AWS. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Sarah and Hart. Want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hi, welcome everyone. I'm Sarah Curry. I'm the Organizational Excellence Leader for AWS Global Services Security. Thank you so much for coming. Hart?
Hi everybody. I look after Global Services Security. My name's Hart. And I'm also excited to share with you that we launched the AWS Security Incident Response Service this week. So I'm looking after that as well.
Excellent. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about the importance of emotional intelligence and security. And we'll talk about some best practices to elevate your security leadership with EQ skills. Then we'll talk about some case studies where emotionally intelligent security workshops have really made a difference in leaders and their ability to be effective. And finally, you'll get some resources for further growth because we know this is only the beginning of your EQ journey. Hopefully, it will inspire you to continue along it in the days to come. So I want to start with a little bit of a poll, and I'd love to see a show of hands on if this is a challenge you're facing right now as a security leader or security practitioner. Okay, you can raise your hand for multiple ones, but I'd love to see from the audience a little bit. How about regulating your own stress during high conflict discussions and debates? Anybody feel some stress when you're doing that? Okay, all right, got a good show of hands there. How about this one? Managing the room when emotions are running high, especially other people's emotions. Okay, got a lot on that one. Number 3, how about getting your stakeholders to understand and value security outcomes? Okay, some hands shot up really quickly on that one.
Far too many hands.
That was a popular one. We'll definitely address that. And then inspiring others to champion security, right? Getting your whole organization, your whole company, and your own team to be able to do that. All right, got a bunch of hands on that. And then finally, connecting authentically through empathy. How about that one as a challenge you may be facing? Okay, got some good hands on that. So it seems like everyone has at least one of these, and it turns out I think people have multiple ones. And that's why we talk about emotional intelligence. The framework of emotional intelligence really has 4 main components, and they address all of the challenges that we just talked about that pretty much every one of you raised your hand on, at least for one. It's self-awareness, understanding your own emotional state, how you're coming across. Then there's self-management, which is regulating yourself in a way that is productive. And then it goes to the social competencies, which is being aware of what other people are feeling and thinking, social awareness, also known as empathy. And finally, relationship management, knowing how to actually manage other people and build a relationship in a productive way and influence in a way where there's really joint and aligned outcomes for the business. And I love this quote from Meng Tan, who founded an emotional intelligence program at Google, then wrote several New York Times bestsellers. He said, "The aim of developing emotional intelligence is to help you optimize yourself and function at an even higher level than what you're already capable of." Now, I'd love to see how many of us would like to function at an even higher level than what you're capable of right now. Like to improve? All right, I think everyone raised their hand on that one. So, why is EQ important in security? Sarah, you want to talk about that?
I would love to. So we saw when we were doing these different workshops on emotional intelligence that there was such a critical comparison and complementary aspect to security. And to put it in simple terms, if you have low emotional intelligence, it's going to result in suboptimal security outcomes. But don't take it from me. We actually have some data to back this up. So some of the different studies that we're starting to see around emotional intelligence and security is that only 13% of security practitioners actually see empathy as a valuable skill. This is alarmingly low because we're obviously, as security practitioners, working with people. We're not just focusing on building better systems. We want to build better teams and really empower our organizations to have that culture of security. We're also seeing that nearly 50% of cybersecurity leaders are going to be leaving their organizations due to work-related stress. This relates a lot to the emotional intelligence aspects of that personal competency. So how are you self-aware about your own emotions and then being able to manage them and using some tactics, which we'll talk about later. And then another aspect, I saw a lot of you raise your hands when it came to being able to relate to your business stakeholders on relating security outcomes to their business needs. Well, we're actually seeing about 62% of CISOs are saying that they see this as a key issue for poor communication and being able to reduce their time to response and effectively mitigate for security incident response. So as we all know, these are very critical aspects to having a better security posture and empowering our teams and our organizations so that we can stay safe for our customers. And a big aspect of this is that as we're moving into this really exciting time with AI and emerging technology, we're actually seeing that emotional intelligence and flexibility are some of the top 2 out of 3 skills that we're seeing for leaders. And this is going to be an aspect that for you as security practitioners and leaders, it's going to help you to better adapt for our different complex, changing for our critical cybersecurity landscape. And something that's a real kicker is that there was a study done by Motorola and the Institute for Health of Human Potential that actually found that investing in your people and giving them stress management training and EQ training actually increased their productivity by 93%, which is not a typo. I was like, I had to check.
Wow, that is pretty high.
And so this is going to be something that's going to help empower your teams to be better leaders, better security practitioners, and partners within your business so you can have better security outcomes for your customers. And so how do these aspects specifically relate to security? Well, it's going to create that better culture of security that we all strive for. It's leaning into that empathy so that people feel comfortable escalating and creating that blame-free culture. Making sure that people are innovating and using their creativity and you're able to uplift them and amplify their ideas. Having that self-awareness and self-management to help with your own job satisfaction, and as a leader, having that contagious energy that trickles down to inspire and motivate others to champion security, while also helping to increase your inclusion and equity and communicating with others so that you can actually get more investments in your security and making sure that other champions in your organization are making sure that they're uplifting security in everything that they do. And so at AWS, we know it's not just the technical skills that are crucial to this. It's, again, your emotional intelligence. And we do actually eat our own dog food. And by doing that, we actually have been conducting these emotional intelligence workshops. So I would love for Rich to talk a little bit about how we do those. And throughout this session, we'll actually be going through some case studies of what we do during our workshops so that you can take this as tangible outcomes for you and your organization.
Excellent. I'm happy to do that, Sarah. So I'm going to talk about EPIC security workshops. So you probably are wondering, well, what is EPIC? So EPIC is a program that upskills leaders in emotional and social intelligence skills so they can lead with greater empathy, purpose, inspiration, and connection. And since the inception of the program a few years ago, we've actually had the opportunity to engage almost 500,000 leaders. So about 400,000 internally in Amazon, and then almost 100,000 externally with our customers, such as yourselves. And we've seen some really quantifiable increases in a lot of metrics that we'll actually talk about in just a little bit. But that sort of productivity, creativity, innovation, health, happiness, and success are definitely things that are really encouraging to be able to see. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's helping security practitioners make things more secure. And when you enhance your emotional intelligence and your social intelligence skills, you wind up increasing a lot of the aspects of your human performance, right? And of course, at the end of the day, we have technology, we have this thing called AI, maybe you've heard of it, and yet AI is going to take over a lot of things, but it will not take over a lot of the human aspects. Communication, influence, empathy still really have to be done by actual human beings in many ways. And so things such as self-awareness, stress management, empathy and social awareness, which is the foundation of influencing other people, inspirational leadership, productive conflict. Of course, we all have conflict, and that's actually a beneficial part of life and teams, but making it productive, and then finally, interpersonal connection. And one of the things I often think about in terms of stress management is, in order to actually perform well, you need sort of an optimum amount of stress, not too little, not too much. But I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you have woken up anytime in the recent past and thought, yesterday was just really not stressful enough. I really hope today at work is more stressful, right? Probably not a common occurrence, and so stress management and reducing that is certainly one of the key skills we want to develop as emotional intelligence practitioners. All right, I'm going to now hand it over to Hart to talk about our next section.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rich and Sarah. So we'll talk a little bit about what it takes foundationally to do a little bit of self-management, right? The first thing that is really important is to check in on yourself, right? There's a number of studies that have been done that indicate that most adults can only name about 10 emotions, right? So just take a moment and count through how many emotions can you name, right? Happy, sad, glad. Anybody get to 10? Anybody get more than 10 emotions?
Oh, I see a hand.
Yeah, a couple. Just a few folks, right?
All the characters inside out.
All the characters inside out, a
Exactly.
good place to start, right? And so as you're thinking through that, like, you have to start with an awareness of where you are emotionally, what your current state is, and then you need to make a choice, right? Do you want to stay in that emotional state, or do you want to shift to a new emotional state, right? And as a leader, that's pretty critical. How many times have you maybe walked into a room and somebody asks a very innocent sounding question, are you okay? You say, of course, I feel fine. But something you were presenting to them, maybe your facial expression, maybe the way you walked in, you were slouching or you were leaning over, maybe you were walking with a little bit of a limp, something indicated to them something might not be all right. And if they picked up on that and you didn't, right, it already puts you as a disadvantage as a leader in terms of driving the right outcome in that interaction, right? So start out with a little self-check, see how you are, and then make a decision, do I want to stay or do I want to shift, right? So there's a number of different ways, both, I'll say kind of strategically, to self-manage and then tactically, right? From a strategic standpoint, I think you need to start with your outlook, right? Study after study shows that having a positive mental state dramatically impacts a particular outcome. If you look at wilderness survival and search and rescue, something I've personally been passionate about for a very long time, right? You'll hear over and over again that a positive mental attitude is the #1 tool you can bring into the wilderness with you to drive a safe and successful outcome, having a good time and coming back safely, right? It starts there. And so developing positivity, right? Looking for opportunities to practice positivity takes time for it to be able to pay off in the moment when you need it. So that's a bit of a strategic skill. I often reflect on conversations I've had over the years in a professional setting where somebody comes in with a really challenging situation. And I found that if the security person in the room says, well, we just can't do that, or that's not possible, or it's against policy, the conversation's shut down, there's no path forward. But if the security person in the room says, gosh, I hear you, that's really tough, but I think if we squint enough and look far enough over the horizon, we can see a path to move forward, then it's game on, right? Everybody leans in and we try to figure out how to get there. And so cultivating that positivity is a really important strategic skill. The next strategic skill I'll share with you, and this should be obvious to all of us, but I think over time as professionals, we lose sight of the value in it, is connecting with friends, right? Again, study after study shows that not only spending time with friends in your personal life, but having deep, meaningful friendships at work, people you really value and people who value you, not only is a good indicator of how long you might spend in that role or in that job or in the workplace, but also the energy, the productivity, the motivation you bring to it, right? Everybody wants to help a friend, right? Everybody wants to see their friends succeed. And when things get tough, you rely on your friends. Sometimes it's just a little pick-me-up. It's like, hey, things will get better. Other times it's like, hey, Sarah, this is a really tough situation. I know you have the skills to drive it forward, right? I'm going to reach out to somebody I know before I reach out to a stranger with that same skill set, right? And so that's, again, it's a practice skill. You can't just wait for the need to have a friend, right? It's something you've got to develop over time and check in. And so the first homework assignment I'm going to give you in the audience, and to be honest, if you're watching this online later, is check in with your friends. Could be a text, phone call, go out for coffee or tea, go to a ball game. But the important part is do the thing you enjoy doing with your friend. Don't make it surface level. right? Go spend time with the people who matter to you. And then we can get into a number of different tactical skills that you can build around self-management. We're gonna actually practice one here today live, right? And it's this idea of breathing mindfully, right? Some of you might have experienced this if you practice yoga or certain sports. If you've been in law enforcement or the military, this is a technique that they teach. It's a way of connecting something you physically control with the mental state and your body's reaction to a change in the mental state. It's a very, very simple skill. And like I said, we're gonna practice it today. So this idea behind the breathing is that you wanna drive down your cortisol and drive up your oxytocin to reduce stress, increase your optimism, right? And then there are nice long-term benefits as well, right, to your physiology. What I'd like to everybody take a minute is to do this with me. And so here's the general idea. We're gonna breathe in, right, for a count of 4. We're gonna hold it for a count of 4. We're gonna breathe out for a count of 4. And then we're gonna hold that for a count of 4. So it's like a box. In, hold, out, hold, right? The amount of time doesn't matter so much. Some people breathe in 4, breathe out 8. What's important is the rhythm and to do it for a period of time. Now you might ask, in a stressful situation, should I stop what we're doing and everybody breathe for a minute? Maybe, right? Depends on the nature of the stress, right? If you've got bullets coming down range, maybe that's not the time to take a full minute, right? But perhaps in a business meeting, though, it could be okay. What you see over time, though, is that if this is a skill you practice, it doesn't take a minute. It takes literally the 8 seconds to do one complete rotation. It triggers the physiological response in your body, and you're like, okay, right? Here we are, we're ready to go. All right, is everybody ready to practice?
I'm ready.
Practice
Let's
with me?
do it.
And you can
All
close
right.
your eyes.
So you
too.
can close your eyes if that makes you feel better about it. I'm gonna wait for the clock to just count down another few seconds. And ready? You can breathe in. Breathe out. Hold it. Breathe in for 4. Breathe out for 4. All right, how does everybody feel about their moment of Zen? All right? Feel a little better? Anybody feeling worse? Hopefully not? No? All right. It's a really great technique, something you can practice. You can deploy it in the moment to get a really great result. There are other really good techniques, though, to use tactically as well. This idea of reframing to regulate your emotions is super powerful, right? Sometimes I like to think about it as the idea of either adding context to a particular feeling or situation, or deliberately changing the context that's, right, the situation or the conversation is grounded in, right? And so you might start, for example, with an opportunity to reinterpret something, right? And take the threat out of the situation. You may reposition, right? So this idea, how can I change this from something where maybe I'm anxious or concerned or feeling overwhelmed to how can I be grateful for having the opportunity to solve this problem and work with such amazing people to resolve it, right? You might think about the priority and the order and think about the distance from the situation, right? How important is this decision 10 minutes from now, 10 weeks from now, 10 months from now, right? Put it in a slightly different context, a time frame or an order of priority. And then also you can normalize it. And normalizing is such a powerful skill as a leader, right? If you're willing and you're able to baseline where you're at and where everybody else is at. Sometimes just voicing that is like, hey, look, I'm concerned about this too, right? But we're all in this together and we're gonna figure out a path forward, right? It's very different than walking in saying, why isn't this resolved yet, right? Because you're nervous about getting it resolved. And so normalizing your feeling, normalizing the situation, creating that space, opening it up for people to say, you know what, hey, like I feel the same way too, right? Or hey, I see the same issue you see, and I see it in the same way, and let's move it forward. Another question that I'll often ask is, what would have to be true for us to be able to move forward or make a change here, right? So sort of check in on like, how would we want to change the context in order to move forward? And so, taking this opportunity to reframe for yourself, reframe for the team, again, is a very powerful tool and technique in the moment to get to the heart of what needs to get done to get the right security outcome you're looking for.
And Hart, if I could actually make one comment on that previous slide too. I love what you said about reframing. That first one there, where it's talking about reinterpreting, there's a couple of things that I've encountered a lot as I've met with leaders, in different parts of the world. And one is this rapidly changing environment of technology, especially with AI. A lot of people are feeling like, whoa, this is like really challenging. I may not have the skill set. And instead of saying, hey, I'm not good at this or I'm going to fail, add the word yet. I'm not good at this yet. And that's actually from Carol Dweck at Stanford, a really powerful growth mindset technique. So you may not be good at it yet. And I find that to be powerful. And then the other one is the sort of a social skill. It says in the slide there, assume positive intent.
Yeah.
And we came up with this sort of really cool but nerdy way of saying it. We call it the human API. That when you connect with other human beings, assume positive intent. And you have a higher probability of good outcome if you assume they have positive intent, you have positive intent. Maybe don't agree, but coming from that point of view will help you increase the chances of coming to some kind of alignment versus assuming negative. And so try to use the human API in all our engagements.
Absolutely. It's funny you mention that because Sarah and I have a little story
We do.
about assuming positive
I
intent.
love
We
it.
do. And the slide that you see up here is actually a flywheel that we created around how you can reframe to increase positive reinformation of escalations, enforcement of escalations within your organization. And yes, Hart and I do have a story. So when I started as an associate security consultant, I made a mistake, unfortunately, and had to hop on an escalation call, and lo and behold, the leader that hopped on was Hart here. I was super upset. So talking about naming your emotions, I was overwhelmed, I was sad, I was crying, and I thought I was gonna get fired, honestly, because previous organizations I had been with were not very kind to when you made mistakes or when you escalated. And so we hopped on this bridge call and Hart joined. There were other people that were feeling high tense emotions as well, so there was a lot of overwhelm in the room. And Hart joined, and going back to that social API of assume positive intent, Hart said, Sarah, thank you so much for escalating. How are we gonna solve this together? And immediately, and you can see in the flywheel, that helped others to acknowledge the contribution and also that the most senior person in the room was calm and collected. And it helped the emotions to calm down. Everyone was able to, instead of focusing on how we felt in the moment, shift our mindset and actually focus on the specific problem and how we were going to mitigate that as fast as possible. And so by doing this, it creates that flywheel of now people also have seen that by thanking for escalating and decreasing that emotions, they're now going to feel more likely to escalate in the future because they saw that blame-free security escalation actually happen in real time. And so something that's pretty cool is that over the last 5 years, I've grown into a leadership position myself. And so now when I hop on the escalation call and I'm the leader in the room, I start by thanking others. And again, assuming that positive intent. And it really helps to create that flywheel and that culture of security where people know that they can escalate and they're gonna get that help without feeling any type of consequence. So it's a really great way that you can reframe when it comes to escalations.
Yeah, and again, it's a small little thing, right? That assume positive intent and having a tool to do it. In this case, it's just literally thanking somebody. You're not thanking them for making the mistake, just to be clear. You're thanking them for owning up to it and taking that first step of making the effort to resolve it, right? And again, it empowers people to do the right thing, right? So it's super, super cool. So with that, Sarah, I'm going to
Yeah.
talk about the mission of discovery.
I would love to. So I saw some hands earlier when it came to being able to translate security needs into business outcomes. So I would love to see some hands again. Have you ever felt like you're constantly repeating yourself around your different security policies and controls?
That never happens.
Okay, I see lots of hands. How many of you kind of lose the energy or like, wow, I've done this a million times. Do I have to explain this one more time to the same person? Can I see some hands? Okay, yes, a lot of you. And so something I would like to challenge you all, so going back to that reframing, thinking about how can I actually better translate to others what these security needs are and what they're interested in. What are their goals? What are their values? What are their challenges? And so something that we actually do during these workshops is called the mission of discovery. And these workshops are super fun because they're interactive. We do some role play and simulations, similar to incident response actually, because you don't want to practice in the moment. You want to make sure that you're actually going through these scenarios and you're getting better as a leader for having clear communication on translating that security jargon to actual business outcomes for your partners. So you can see here, by relating back to that EPIC acronym of, we're looking at the P here. So what is that sense of purpose? So as security practitioners and leaders, it's really our purpose to help others move fast securely. So we're not the people of no. We don't want to be roadblocks. We really want to help enable others. That's our core purpose. But when we shift and look at our business partners, we can break this down by looking at what are their goals. Are they trying to ship faster to production? What are their values? Are they looking at long-term benefits? Are they looking at how they can earn their users' trust, their customers' trust? What are their strengths? You know, maybe as a finance persona, they're looking at how do they balance that ROI versus cost optimization? And then what barriers are they seeing? Are they getting the investments they need? Do they have the controls in place so that they can move fast and securely without having to do that manual heavy lifting? And so something that is important about this is that it is a meaningful dialogue over time. While the values may stay the same for the person, there are going to be different goals, there's going to be different barriers. And so these are different conversations that you should start to have with your different business partners to better understand what they need. And the reason this is so important is we see a lot of security practitioners and leaders, they don't actually start creating those meaningful relationships with their business partners until they need money or there's an escalation. Which, as you know, it might be if you have some teenagers where they don't want to hang out with you and they finally do because it turns out they actually want some extra money for the movies. It feels a little disingenuous. So this is how you can better build those relationships. And when you actually do need to go to them for help, you can create that authentic connection with them.
How many of you have a regular one-on-one with your business partners? Finance, legal, HR, right? Do you ever take time to talk about their career aspirations, their professional development, right? Why they're in that role? Or is it always like quarterly, monthly, rhythm of the business stuff? Right? Like at its core, right, what we're talking about here is really understanding and aligning with the person as opposed to the function they represent, right? So like take that opportunity, say, hey, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Why'd you get into finance in the first place, right? Like, what do you love to do? What would you like to see some improvements in? And again, if you can do that, as Sarah's saying, outside of the normal cadence, right? You start to build an authentic relationship, and then maybe they'll ask you the same thing, right? You can get to know each other a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I know these two are both really great at doing it, but starting the first 5 minutes of your call just by checking in. How are you doing? What are you up to? Have you gone and seen any of the new movies out? What hobbies are you up to? And really, it goes a long way to creating that trust between your different business partners. And so you can see here we have some different breakdowns of personas. And this is how you can start to think about what your different business partners are thinking about when it comes to their goals, values, strengths. So we can see here the finance partner, they're trying to focus on cost optimization while actually balancing some of the barriers of how do they have short-term results balanced with that long-term aspect of helping the organization to be successful. And so something we see here very similarly with security practitioners is they'll go to their finance team and they'll report on metrics such as patching and CVEs or reducing the attack surface, and the finance person is like, that doesn't relate to me. I don't know how that helps me at all. And so something that we've seen to be helpful is translating that into what they're interested in and what they're motivated to remediate. So for example, if you're reducing the attack surface, maybe translating that to, actually, we terminated this amount of unused resources, which led to millions of dollars of savings for our organization while reducing risk. And that's really going to catch their attention. So that's something that we've seen to be successful with the finance persona. And then moving to technology. The technology partners, they want to move fast. They want to integrate that emerging technology. And sometimes their barrier is us as security practitioners, if we're not looking at helping them to move faster while implementing securely, so looking at automation, removing the manual heavy lifting, that is a way that we can better connect with them. So you might have heard of our Security Guardians program. That is a way that at AWS, we looked at how can we scale out our application security team by creating these security practitioners and guardians to better help these individual service teams have that guardian who essentially is a person that's actually in the service team and knows the architecture and can move faster so that you're not going back and remediating right before you go into production. So in the workshop, we actually do a role play here. So we're going to test this out on stage, a little mini role play. You can see on the screen there is some open-ended questions, and these can be just some simple questions that, again, like Hart mentioned, on your one-on-ones with partners, asking what are their goals, what inspires you, what are you excited about this week that you're working on. And this is something that you can take back, and you'll start to see that slow change of earning trust with your different partners. So we are going to do a quick little role play to set the stage. Hart is going to be the security practitioner. I am the finance partner, and Rich here is our technology partner. So Hart, hand it off.
Hi, Rich. Great to see you again.
Well, it's nice to see you too, Hart.
Awesome. So I know you've got a lot of big, innovative things coming up on the roadmap. I'm wondering what I can do to help meet your goals this year.
Yeah, as you likely know, AI is a huge initiative for our company, and we want to integrate AI into our entire software stack, right? Everything we possibly can in terms of our technology, both internally and externally. And honestly, the biggest thing is I want to make sure it doesn't get slowed down by security. I mean, we need to move fast. It's a highly competitive market, and there's a lot to do. And so we just want to be able to really make sure that speed is of the essence. And so, that's really my biggest ask and biggest concern.
Yeah, man, I totally hear you. And you know what? It's interesting that you say that because on the security team, we've actually been trying to think about what are the right Gen AI use cases for us to use. So maybe we could work together on this. You could help skill up our team on Gen AI and help us think through some use cases as our technology lead. And then what that'll allow us to do is make sure that we have the right guardrails in place and the right golden paths so that when you're ready to deploy, you can move it quickly and securely.
I look forward to that. I think that'd actually be really helpful.
Cool, thank you. And I really appreciate the help as well. That'll be awesome.
You bet. I look forward to it.
Super cool. Sarah, how's it going?
You're coming to ask me for money again.
Not this time, although we've got a meeting in a couple of weeks. We're going to chat about that. We're most of the way through the year, starting to think about next year. How are you thinking about key performance metrics?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I don't know if I've ever been asked that from a security team before. Something that I'm really thinking about is return on investment and how are we actually saving our developers time by reducing some of that heavy lifting and optimizing our costs. And I'm feeling a lot of pressure as well from our COO actually on that operational resiliency and making sure we're keeping our uptime for the services.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. Literally just a few minutes ago, I was in this meeting with this woman who was talking about how we've got some initiatives to reduce attack surface in our organization. And she was sort of sharing that, I bet that if we can reduce enough attack surface, we're going to see a real reduction in infrastructure utilization that's going to translate into cost savings for our business. Maybe I can hook the two of you up and you can think about driving some momentum there.
That would be awesome. I would love to meet her.
Awesome. I think her name is Sarah.
Wow, there's so many of us.
I love it.
Thanks for the connection, Hart. I
Oh,
really
of course.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Of course.
So breaking the fourth wall here. So actually in our workshops, we do very in-depth role plays like that and simulations for actual mission of discovery and then also incident response, focusing specifically on that high tension conversations that you can have. And these are something that's really helpful because again, it's going to help you to practice those different questions so that they come very naturally to you as you are building those relationships. Another thing that we suggest to, again, not just focus on those one-on-ones or those quarterly meetings is the weekly security meeting that we host at AWS. And I know Hart is a key point of that, so I'll pass it to Hart.
Yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about that. So one of the things that we do, I don't think it's unique, but it's certainly very rare, is we do in fact have a weekly security meeting. So 52 times a year, we get together with senior leadership, so the CEO, the CISO, and a number of security and technology leads, and we talk about what's important in the company when it relates to security, right? And there's a couple of interesting benefits from that. First of all, it takes security out of the realm of being a project or a program or a set of initiatives, and it makes it a fundamental part of the way we run our business. We don't talk about it occasionally. We don't just send out, periodic reports about it, right? Leadership gets together as part of the routine rhythm of the business, and we debate, we discuss, and we make timely decisions around how we're gonna operate securely as an organization, right? And so if you think about other rhythm of the business activities in your organization, I think the recommendation, right, is to do at least what you're doing for whatever the core mission of the business is. If you've got a weekly sales call, you should have a weekly security meeting. If you only have a monthly sales call, fine, have a monthly security meeting with leadership. But security should be fundamental to whatever business you're in, right? It helps keep everybody safe and secure, helps earn trust with customers, right? And so you really want to lean into that rhythm of the business. I don't think you can talk about it too much, right? So if you wanted to get together a few times a week, that's great, but match the rhythm of the business. And then the second thing that's really important is you have the right people in the room and have it be a decision-making meeting, right? So it's not about red, yellow, green charts. It's not about sharing reports, weather reports, reporting the news, right? It's about strategy and tactics and making decisions as a leadership team that inform how the business thinks about risk, how the business thinks about opportunity, how the business thinks about earning trust and investing in safety, security, soundness, privacy, right, compliance, those sorts of things. And so that's the other big thing I'd suggest again is keep it out of the realm of reporting and keep it in the realm of driving data-driven business decisions, right, from the leaders who can affect those changes, right? We've seen it be super effective in AWS, so much so that we now do it in a number of different business units as well. So we have the AWS weekly security meeting with Matt and Chris Betts, and then a number of the lines of business have their own weekly security meetings because they see the value of it, just like they might have their own weekly sales meetings or weekly ops meetings if they're an engineering organization.
So next, we're going to pass it to Rich to talk about how you can actually inspire others to champion security and really build that culture of security within your organization.
Excellent. I love the conversation so far. And by the way, when we do the simulations in the workshops, we make sure that some of the stakeholders are not as agreeable as we were in this particular one. So you get to actually simulate dealing with, non-agreeable
Wide eyes.
If I can just add to that,
Yes,
the
please.
simulations are great, the workshops are great. You might find yourself in the situation though asking the what if, right? And so some things we'll do is, for lack of a better term, ghosting the response. So like sometimes we'll have like a little huddle and say, what do we think our finance leader is gonna say on these issues, right? And just kind of, simulate that a little bit and then go in and we're better prepared to have an authentic conversation and not walk in and kind of waste their time or abuse the privilege of having that access to them, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's good to game it out a little bit beforehand.
Excellent. Well, it's a great sort of mechanism or way to create more empathy, right? Because again, it's thinking about what's the perspective of the other person, so you can come in and actually have the maximum opportunity and chance to actually understand and align. So when it comes to championing security, as security leaders, so much of what we do is really influence, right? It's not just authority, right? You have your own security organization, but then you have all these stakeholders over whom you don't necessarily have authority, but you have varying levels of influence. And the most powerful kind of influence is this thing called inspiration. That's why we say inspiring others to champion security, because you're getting people not just to do it, but to want to do it. So it's not just compliance, but it's commitment. And so to inspire others to champion security, we need to motivate them to want to do it, but then also create the environment so they can do it. And there's a really powerful way to think about this. It's called the tough love matrix of leadership. Now, this comes from Adam Grant, a really well-known author and Wharton professor of organizational psychology. And he talks about the fact that if you want to actually be the most effective kind of security or leader in general, but in this context, security leader, you need to think about two dimensions of your impact. One is expectations, low or high, and the other is care, low or high. Now, there's this really fascinating sort of myth that if you have high expectations, you automatically have low care. Or if you have high care, you automatically have low expectations. But that's a myth because they're two different things. They're actually on two different dimensions. And if you have low expectations, you can either be supportive or laissez-faire, depending on the level of care. And I think we'd all agree that there's no successful security leader who's going to be able to have low expectations. That's not really a great sort of job strategy. So we can sort of get rid of that whole left side. So we're basically in the high expectations realm. But if you have low care, then you wind up being demanding. And if you have high care, you wind up being inspiring. And to what Hart and Sarah talked about earlier, it's actually genuinely caring about the individual. It's caring about what they care about, their goals, their career. I call it pains and challenges, hopes and dreams. When you interact with someone who you believe actually cares about you, you're going to let them have more influence because you trust. And so this high care and high expectations creates that inspiring leader. And now the reality is it does take a higher level of skill, right? We, I think, more easily can set the bar high and be demanding, but actually show we care. That's where the emotional intelligence skills actually come to bear. Now, the little sort of diving deeper into basically just human motivation, there are kind of like four fundamental things that almost every human being is motivated by in some way, shape, or form. And they wind up spelling RAMP. It's relationships, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Essentially, everybody that we meet is going to be one, two, or all of these things. What are relationships, right? It means, well, I have people who care about me and I care about them. And it turns out that it is actually one of the highest factors for why people stay at their job longer term. If they have good relationships, they're much, much more likely to want to stick around. The second one is autonomy. Being able to be the sort of determinant of their own destiny, do things the way they believe is best, solve problems creatively in a way that they really want to strive to do. And so when you give people autonomy, they feel like empowered and they have that locus of control. And one research study found that if people have autonomy, they're actually 136% more satisfied with their career, meaning it's just much higher than those who have low autonomy. Mastery essentially means, hey, I'm really good at something. I'm really skilled, I have knowledge, I can contribute, I can make a difference and in this organization, on this team. And then finally, purpose, right? It's the idea that I'm doing something bigger than myself. It's bigger than just my job or even my team. I'm helping my organization. And in security, purpose is a big thing, right? I'm literally making the world safer. And so those things are things that if we can tap into, understand, and align with, we actually wind up having a lot more influence. And leaders can reinforce these kinds of actions, one, by modeling it ourselves, and then two, by making them expected, supported, and rewarded, right? Your example earlier where Hart, as a senior leader, thanked someone for escalating, and then other leaders see that and go, well, I want to also do the same thing. And it becomes an expected behavior. We support it, and then we reward it, right? We go, hey, that's a great way of responding with empathy so that we actually do create a culture of escalation rather than maybe a culture of fear. And interestingly, at Amazon, being a guardian is really an honor. It's not like, hey, we need someone to do it. Sarah, will you do it? Sarah will do anything. You know, it's not like that. It's a real privilege to be one. You get visibility, you get recognition, you can display your expertise, you can take on a leadership role. You actually tap into all 4 of the RAMP motivators. And it's also something that helps you advance your career and helps your team meet their goals. And so it's really a powerful thing. And leaders like Hart and others have made it into something that does help people be happier, healthier, and more successful. And so to go a little deeper into Security Guardians, you know, when you're a member of the team, which was mentioned earlier, you're actually part of the service team, but you volunteer. It's not like your paid job, it is a volunteer thing, but we have many, many people who love doing it for all the reasons that I mentioned before. And you're actually an extension of the AppSec function, and you're scaling the security awareness. And this is so important because just the people who are directly security personnel, it's not enough. We need people who are all over the organization in different roles outside the security function directly to want to be able to champion this if we're really going to be able to make things as secure as possible. Hart or Sarah, any things to add on this?
I would just say, you know, echoing what you said, it's really an honor. And not only do these people get to represent their teams as the security practitioner, they also get additional professional development. In January, I'm super excited that we're going to be doing these emotional intelligence workshops with them so they can actually scale it out throughout their teams. So they're really amplifiers and optimizers within their teams, which makes it so successful throughout AWS.
I love it.
Yeah. Rich doesn't know it, but I think he just volunteered to be a security guardian.
Well, it's an honor. It's an honor to be even considered for that. So let me give you a few results that are pretty interesting. We've trained over 2,000 software development engineers to be security guardians. And they're now not just developing these software, but they're also thinking about the security as part of that. And we found that we actually have 22.5% fewer medium to high severity findings during an AppSec review because they're already thinking about it beforehand. That translates into nearly 16,000 fewer findings over the course of that time. And then finally, security reviews now take 26.9% less time to complete end to end. I mean, imagine the time savings. And we actually did total it up, and it's about 210,000 days that were saved when you look at the entire stack because these security champions are actually doing it as part of their volunteer job. And we love programs like this. And you know, if you want to start a security guardian program, we can actually help you get that off the ground. But start small. You're not going to boil the ocean all at once. But if you can really start small and then take that idea, see the results, build enthusiasm, really have success, and then you can actually grow it from there. Any thoughts on that, Hart or Sarah?
Yeah, I was going to add in, we think of it almost as a community flywheel. You inspire one person, they go inspire 3, those 3 inspire 100, and it just keeps scaling from there. And that's what makes it so exciting. And something about the Guardians program that's helpful too is we like to be frugal with our AppSec team, but this allows that team to scale out and again, shifting left because these people are embedded in the service team, so they understand the architecture. And so if you can visualize a graph, essentially they're shipping faster while actual incidents are going down. So it's helped us to be very successful, and again, that decentralized aspect of culture of security.
Yeah, and then I'll just add that, you know, we've learned some interesting things over time from an empathy standpoint. One example is you might have a Guardians or Champions program in your organization, and you might have the experience for them as the Guardian where the AppSec team sends them a vulnerability report, right, like a PDF or an email, and then they have to go do a ton of work, false positives, false negatives, researching root cause, right, getting it all resolved, and then they go back to AppSec and say, will you please revalidate me and send me a new report? Imagine how that feels to be at arm's length, right? One of the things we learned over time is that we've got to have them working together. So in our case, our security guardians are using the exact same tools as the AppSec engineers. They don't get sent reports. They log in to the AppSec system, and they can generate their own reports if they want. They can investigate findings the same way an AppSec engineer would. And so there's that camaraderie that's there. There's a parallelism to it. And they feel like they really are part of the AppSec team because they are, right? And so thinking about it from that kind of empathetic standpoint makes a huge difference if you're especially asking for volunteers, right? You've got to take care of them if you're gonna ask a volunteer to meet a very high expectation.
I love it. And I don't know if you noticed, but we actually mentioned the word exciting and security in the same sentence. And so it is actually possible when people are motivated and inspired. All right, I'm going to hand it over to you, Sarah, for this next point.
We love to be fun in security. So going back to, okay, we did all of these different tangible aspects of breaking down empathy, purpose, inspiration, how you connect with others. But what's the actual outcome here? So how we run our workshop is we actually do baseline assessments, some pre-work, where we look at their emotional intelligence and how they rate on those 4 aspects of the personal competencies and the social competencies, and also baseline metrics on their confidence when it comes to emotional intelligence, as well as their confidence to translate security outcomes and inspire others. And after the workshops, we conduct another survey and then follow-ups to see how are they actually implementing these. So what we found is that there's been a 42.8% increase in confidence to translate security needs to business outcomes. And this is extremely important because, again, as we look at the security posture of companies, technology is not going to just cut it alone. We need to be able to have that empathy and being able to take security jargon and translate it better to our business partners, because that's going to help us to have faster outcomes, get more investment money for our security objectives, and then also, again, relate back to our business personas and partners on what are their actual goals and how can we uplift them in their career as well as their organization. We've also seen an incredible outcome, which is a 53.5% increase in confidence with the ability to lead with empathy and motivate others to champion security. Again, this is extremely important because you can't just have your security team being the one to talk about security. You really need to make sure that you're building those advocates across your organization and being able to inspire and motivate others, similar to what Rich and Hart were saying about the autonomy. How are they able to move faster and learn more about security and get really excited? Something we've even seen in AWS that's really exciting is we've seen people raise their hands saying, we actually don't need access to this, so can you revoke that? Which doesn't happen from other organizations that I've been in, at least. So that's something that's super exciting that we're seeing these different impact from the workshop. And then some takeaways. So these are some quotes from our participants, both customers and internal. But what we're seeing is that people love these different tactics to come into meetings focused on what the actual problem or challenge they're facing. So looking internally at that self-awareness, what emotions are they feeling? How are they actually practicing box breathing so they show up as a leader that's calm and collected and ready to work as a team? Also looking at different aspects of using the mission of discovery, building those better relationships and better understanding their partners. And the biggest takeaway that people loved was the role play and simulations. And what I've heard from some different even principal security engineers is that it's been able to help them understand how they can move faster and remove that undifferentiated heavy lifting from their different teams that they're working with, to help inspire them to get excited to meet with security, make security exciting and fun. And so to wrap it up, one of my favorite quotes from Simon Sinek, who is the author of Start With Why, is that 100% of employees are people, 100% of customers are people, 100% of investors are people. And if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. And I think this is critical when it comes to security and helping our security community and practitioners and leaders really see this as an enabler for other business functions. And so we do have some homework for you. And these are some different takeaways that you can actually leave here today and start implementing within your organization. So for the first one, you could actually do this today. We know reInvent has lots of fun things going on, lots of noises, maybe a little bit of sensory overload sometimes. And so you can practice that box breathing. If you're taking a chance between meetings and sessions, just taking some time for yourself to breathe in and out and kind of relax and regulate your emotions. And moving into next week, as you get back to your offices and meeting with different colleagues, starting to get on security escalations and thank people for getting on and escalating, and that we're going to solve this problem together. We actually, again, do host these workshops for customers, so talk to your AWS rep about signing up for one of these workshops. And in the next 3 months, starting to, again, connecting with people authentically and setting up meetings just to learn about what are their career aspirations, how can you better connect with them, learn about what are their values, what are their motivations, what are their challenges, maybe how can you help unblock those for them. And then in the next 6 months, like Hart was talking about, working with your organization to actually set up those weekly security meetings so that you're meeting with different leaders across your organization to focus on not only what your different objectives are, maybe investments that you need, but celebrating those wins and how you're helping to inspire others to champion security. So Rich, I know you also have some resources, so I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, and if you'd like to dive a bit deeper into just emotional intelligence in general, which will help you with your career, but also help you with your personal life. That's the amazing thing about these skills. They're really life success skills. One, as Sarah mentioned, you are welcome to request a security workshop, an epic security workshop for your team or your company. But there's an ebook, and you can find it on eqepicleadership.com, and there's a QR code. You can read more about how emotional intelligence can help you be more innovative, more successful personally and as a team. And we also have an entire innovation website, actually. Amazon has an innovation transformation program where we talk more about our culture, the architecture we have, our leadership principles, the mechanisms, and along with that, obviously, the security things that we do to be able to help you be more innovative and more successful. And a couple final things. If there are some readers out there, which I assume many of you are, these are some excellent books about emotional intelligence that have absolutely transformed my life and the lives of many, many other people, hundreds of thousands. And so there's a great quote that not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. And so if you want to really be an effective leader, reading good books will make a huge difference. These are all excellent. And we actually have the privilege of collaborating with many of these, like Daniel Goleman, Mark Brackett, Jamil Zaki, Linda Hill, Adam Grant, for all the epic stuff that we do at Amazon and that we're able to now share with you. So I want to thank you for your time. It's been absolutely amazing to be together. And I want to see if there's any final thoughts from Hart or Sarah before we depart.
No, thank you all. I just wanted to also give a shout out that we will be doing more of these talks at AWS Reinforce in June next year in Philadelphia. So if you would like to see some of these workshops, please feel free to submit some feedback in the survey that you would like to see some of these actual hands-on learning so that we can deliver those for y'all next year.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.